Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the online service of Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, a loving, spirited, and inclusive congregation. My name is Kathy Stevenson, and it is my pleasure to serve as your worship assistant today. We begin our service by taking a moment to acknowledge that the water, land, and shorelines here in Port Townsend and around are the traditional territory of the Sklallam and Chimicum peoples. We honor and acknowledge our indigenous neighbors and vow to help restore and sustain their homelands, the flora, and the fauna. In a moment, we will be lighting our chalice, but first, let us settle our minds and still our hearts with the ringing of our chime. It is good to be together on this Martin Luther King Sunday, to help us remember that racial justice is rooted in our desire to widen and strengthen the circle of humanity. Let us welcome QUF member Dana Weir, who will now play our prelude, May the Circle Be Unbroken. It is now time to light our chalice. If you have one at home, please join us as we bring light into this moment that we share together. Our chalice lighting words are by our own Reverend Kate Lohr, and they go like this. Let us awaken to this world we live in, to its beauty and wonder, and also to its tragedy and pain. Let us remember that our wholeness, our lives, are only as complete as the lives of those around us. And let us rekindle our commitment to racial justice and equity as we light this holy flame. Our opening words today will be shared by our guest minister, Reverend Amy Beltaine. She will be followed by our own Beau Ohlgren and his story for all ages.
Our call to worship today, our call into the circle of love and justice, comes from Kimberly Quinn Johnson in her piece, Fitted for This Day, based on a poem by June Jordan. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone. Reverend Beltaine is going to be sharing about how everyone can make a difference today, and about how love and persistence is what can guide us. Right now, we might be feeling a bit overwhelmed by all that is happening in the country, and I wanted to dive further into that idea of persistence, that we can do hard things, that you can do hard things, and the work that we need to do together to hold one another accountable for our actions and care for each other deeply and truly is hard work. But it's work that we are capable of doing, that we must do, and that we can do together. So I wanted to share this story that's written by Licia Morelli and illustrated by Maine Diaz. That's called I Am Darn Tough. That's all about that ability to do hard things. I hope you enjoy. I remember tying my shoes. Sun on my skin and wind in my face. I remember the crunch of the dirt beneath my sneakers and my legs kicking up behind me, rocks, roots. I remember running through mud, puddles mirroring the trees around me. The babble of a stream and wind in the leaves above me. I remember tripping and falling, my knee bleeding, then slowly getting up, putting one foot in front of the other. I remember that first big hill, the climb up, up, up. I remember a cramp in my side and being so tired, muscles aching, the sun so hot. I remember crying, feeling defeated, my heart hurting, stomach in knots. I remember stopping, taking a deep breath in and out, telling myself that I've done this before and I can do it again. My heart is big. I am brave. I remember the breeze at my back, my feet bouncing on the trail and the cramp going away. I remember catching up to my friends, smiling and laughing and cheering each other on. I remember seeing the finish line, running through the tape, arms up, smiling so big. I did it. We did it. I know now that I'm strong on the inside. I am strong on the outside. I am darn tough. I believe in you and I believe in us in that we can make a difference because we all have experience doing hard things. And our country is at yet another precipice at this moment. And we can do this together. We can make change, we can hold people accountable, and we can do the hard things that need doing. Because we are all darn tough.
Good morning. I'm Colleen Johnson. I'm president of the board, and I'm here to say thank you to all who attended last Sunday's State of the Congregation meeting. Our bylaws require a 25% attendance, and we had 34%. So I think that's pretty good. One of the things we accomplished was to adopt a mission statement, which is projected on your screen. Now, it's not a forever commitment, but it is a statement that will guide our thinking and our programming and our budgeting for the next year. Dan Hotchkiss, in his book, Governance and Ministry, puts it this way. Good mission statements make clear what good the congregation means to do, whom it hopes to benefit and how, and what it claims as central principles and values. Even the best mission statement is an approximation, subject to improvement or revision as circumstances change and new light dawns. So, you can expect the board to ask you to share your ideas on how we make this happen. Thank you.
What we'd like to do now is acknowledge and welcome those of you who are visiting us this morning. You are invited to say your hello in the comments section and tell us your name and where you're from. Those of you that are not visitors may also do the same. We also hope you'll join us for our virtual coffee hour after the service. If you don't have that link, it will be posted in the comment section at the end of the service. And if you don't currently see the comment section, simply take your device out of full screen mode and it will appear. Lastly, if you find this service useful or inspirational, hopefully both, please share the link with your friends and family. We get great joy in widening the circle of our online community. So welcome, everyone. We are glad you are with us today. It is now time for our offering. Today, our offering will go to the online programming and building costs here at QUF. If you aren't already a pledging member, this is also your opportunity to express your gratitude for what we offer here. If you'd like to make a donation to QUF, you have three options. You can text the amount that you'd like to give to the number now showing at the bottom of the screen. You can go to QUF.org and click on the word Giving, or simply mail a check to QUF. We will now gratefully receive your offering as we listen to Helen Lauritzen play a beautiful piece by African-American composer Natalie Henduras. It is entitled Scuppernong, at a Certain Church. Thank you for that gift, Helen, and Colleen for the information you've provided for us. I have one more announcement today. As we did with the presidential debates this fall, we will be streaming the inauguration on Zoom on Wednesday the 20th, starting at 8:45 for the 9 a.m. start. The link was sent out in the Friday update and is also in the chat now. If you'd like to watch in community, please join us. And now we will share our joys and sorrows, recognizing that our personal joys and sorrows are only a fragment of the joys and sorrows of the larger community of life. And thus, we place this first stone, thinking in particular of Inauguration Day, which will happen this Wednesday. May this day be joyous, free of violence, and the beginning of a brighter chapter in our country's history. And now within the congregation, we light a candle of joy for Kathleen Croston, whose hip replacement surgery went well on Tuesday. She was able to come home Wednesday, and she is making steady progress at home. Get well soon, Kathleen. We also have several birthdays to celebrate today. The first candle is for Chris Copeland, whose birthday was on January 8th. Happy birthday, dear Chris. And the second one is for Celeste Dieback, whose birthday was last Sunday. Here is a photo that was taken on her big day. Our third candle is for our awesome tech specialist assistant, up here with me right now as I speak, member Christina Tweed, whose birthday was on Monday. And our last candle is for Jackie McInvale, whose birthday was on Tuesday. Happy birthday, Jackie. And now, we'll place a final stone, holding in our hearts the joys and sorrows I've just shared, but also thinking of such joys and sorrows among us that are unexpressed but of no less importance. I invite you now into a moment of silence, which will be followed by a musical interlude.
Our reading today is several excerpts from the writings of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, found in Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. A leading voice in the chorus of social transition belongs to the white liberal. Over the past few years, many Negroes have felt that their most troublesome adversary was not the obvious bigot of the Ku Klux Klan or the John Birch Society, but the white liberal who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers tranquility to equality. The white liberal must see that the Negro needs not only love, but justice. It's not enough to say we love Negroes, we have many Negro friends. They must demand justice. Love that does not satisfy justice is no love at all. It is merely a sentimental affection, little more than what one would love for a pet. Love at its best is justice, concretized. Love is unconditional. It is not conditional upon one staying in his place or watering down his demands in order to be considered respectable. The white liberal must rid himself of the notion that there can be a tensionless transition from the old order of injustice to the new order of justice. The Negro has not gained a single right in America without persistent pressure and agitation. It is important for the liberal to see that the oppressed person who agitates for his rights is not the creator of tension. He merely brings out the hidden tension that is already alive. Last summer, when we had our open housing marches in Chicago, many of our white liberal friends cried out in horror and dismay, "You are creating hatred and hostility in the white communities in which you are marching. You're only developing a white backlash." I could never understand that logic. They failed to realize that the hatred and the hostilities were already latently or subconsciously present. Our marches merely brought them to the surface. The white liberal must escalate his support for racial justice rather than de-escalate it. The need for commitment is greater today than ever. So may it be.
I got a brother living out nowhere, doing what he likes to do. People making rules, but my brother, he don't care. He's a rebel through and through. The man wants nothing but freedom. Nothing but freedom. My other brother wanna change the world, and naturally he's always right. Marching around with his mouth unfurled, itching for a straight up fight. He says it's all about justice. All about justice. Well, let me tell you what, nothing but freedom means nothing but freedom. All about justice makes it all about justice. Freedom only wants to have its own way, and justice says you've got to do what I say. And neither brother's bound to budge, and so they duke it out every blessed day. That's how they threw away freedom and justice. And justice and freedom, both stubborn as a mischief, vinegar and piss, not listening to anything of foolish pride. Them fellas are mistaken if they think they'll cross a lake by paddling the boat to just one side. And nothing but freedom leads to nothing but freedom. And all about justice makes it all about justice. Freedom says it's all about me and mine, and justice never cares to even ask why. They can stand there touching noses for a week, they'll never see eye to eye. That's how they crucify freedom and justice. Justice and freedom. Freedom and justice. Justice and freedom. I got a brother living out nowhere, doing what he likes to do. I'm just like that man, and I swear I'm just like his brother too.
Reverend Amy Beltaine provides a UU ministry of spiritual mentoring through individual and group appointments, Sunday services, rites, and rituals. helping friends and family of the oppressed to break open instead of being broken by the pain in the world. When she and her spouse Hawthorne are not pulling their little home behind them, they are at home in Portugal or Portland, Oregon. A graduate of Meadville Lombard School for the Ministry, Amy is on the coordinating committee of the UU Spiritual Directions Network and chair of the Spiritual Direction Program at Cherry Hill Seminary. Amy is a nearly lifelong, earth-honoring, process panentheist and aspires to be a love ninja.
During the week of New Year's, I saw many, many people celebrating the end of 2020. Goodbye and good riddance, 2020. And now we're moving through January, and the problems of 2020 haven't suddenly disappeared. We still have climate chaos. We still have health and economic effects of pandemic. We still have racial inequity. We still have a damaged democracy and a divided nation. We don't get our happily ever after. We don't get our camera panning back from the celebrating city. We don't get the soundtrack of swelling triumphant trumpets. In fact, if history was a novel, I'd say the story isn't ended yet. But maybe that's a good thing, right? There's still time for each of us to be the heroes of our own stories, for each of us to do the one or two right things, the three most important things. There's still time for each of us to give our inner gifts to the world. Maybe, like Frodo in The Lord of the Rings, we're feeling all done, done in, broken, finished with trying. Like Frodo, we say, "I can't do this, Sam." And Sam replies, "I know, it's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered, full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it'll shine out the clearer." Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something. Frodo asks, "What are we holding on to, Sam?" Sam, that there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Here's some more good news. We aren't the only ones who are fighting for good in the world. Not now, and not throughout history. We can each be the change we wish to see in the world. Buddha unlocked his gift and brought good into the world after he encountered death and poverty and deprivation. Jesus embodied love for the world and brought hope to oppressed and despairing people. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. found himself in the middle of a fight for justice and just did one right thing, one true and good thing. And eventually, that ended up being a powerful legacy. And you and me, we too can be the change. Buddha, Jesus, Gandhi, Martin, what did these great people and their great deeds have to do with us? I look at their stories and I say to myself, I'm not perfect like they were. I'm not brave like they were. And I'm overwhelmed with my task list already. Sure, that's what the stories tell us, that these heroes were perfect and always brave and never overwhelmed. These were all people who lived fully, but none were perfect. Yes, all are remembered for the good they did, and all of them lived fully complex, rounded lives. A lot of folks think Jesus did what he did because he was really God. Personally, I think he was just as much God as you or me, and that makes it so much cooler. Because these people were able to do so much without being any different, God-wise, than any of us. What then can you and I do? I'm here to tell you that each one of us is just as perfect and brave and skillful as Jesus. just as amazing as Gandhi, just as fantastic as any hero in any story. No pressure. Malcolm Gladwell is a journalist and author. In his book, Blink, he explores how we are trained by our experiences. The world we grow up in forms our unconscious knowing. Sometimes this is great, like the careful student of art who can spot a forgery in the blink of an eye, but might have trouble telling you how they knew. Sometimes this is terrible, like police officers who reach for their guns when a Black man reaches for his wallet. And Malcolm suggests that we can retrain. We're trained by hearing the daily news that people are despicable, committing crimes and hurting others. We're trained by our experiences on social media that people are mean or gullible. We're trained by entertainment that Black, brown, Asian, really any non-white people are the villain, comic relief, magic or otherworldly or bit players. But we can retrain our unconscious knowing. So I'd like to introduce you to some folks like you and me who did amazing things. And we're not perfect paragons, but whole, complex people who sometimes said, I can't do this, but somehow also did one true thing. Wangari Maathai was born in still colonized Kenya in 1940. As a child, she attended Catholic boarding school where she became involved with the Legion of Mary, whose members attempted to serve God by serving fellow human beings. She had the opportunity to study in the US due to a Kennedy-era program. After a career teaching college classes in biology, zoology, and veterinary science in Kenya, she became involved in environmental work as a way to support her husband, who was serving in Parliament. Through several failures, personal and professional, she persisted in women's rights, pro-democracy, and environmental work, and eventually won the 2004 Nobel Peace Prize. Teresa of Avila was born in 1515 in Spain. She literally climbed over the walls of her family home, escaping her future as a well-to-do noblewoman to become a nun. She embraced life with gusto, or as they say in Spanish, with duende, playing the tambourine, dancing, and scandalizing the novices by enjoying the occasional midnight raid in the kitchen. She wrote letters scolding the Pope and got away with it, and founded the order of discalced or sandalless Carmelites. Her writings introduced and moved forward the idea of mysticism in Catholicism and continue to influence people of all religions. Throughout her writings, Teresa returns to the image of watering one's garden as a metaphor for mystical prayer. Marielle Franco was born in 1979 in Brazil. As a young single mother from the slums of Rio de Janeiro, she became a politician, sociologist, feminist, socialist, and human rights activist. Shortly before her marriage to her girlfriend of 13 years, she was killed in 2018 by 2 former police officers, presumably in retaliation for her work against police brutality and extrajudicial killings. Gopi Shankar Madurai was born 1991 in southern India. Shankar is an equal rights and indigenous rights activist and one of the youngest and the first openly intersex and genderqueer candidates to run for election in the 2016 Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly. Shankar is also the founder of Shrishti Madurai Student Volunteer Collective. Shankar's work inspired the Madras High Court to direct the district government to order a ban on sex reassignment surgeries on intersex children. Shankar serves on the executive board of the International LGBTI Association of Asia, and in 2020, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment appointed Shankar as the South Regional Representative and the National Council for Transgender Persons. Rigoberta Menchú Tun was born in 1959 in Guatemala. She is a Quiché indigenous feminist and human rights activist, dedicating her life to publicizing the rights of Guatemala's indigenous peoples during and after the Guatemalan Civil War, and to promoting Indigenous rights internationally. Her influential autobiography, which appears to have included events from neighbors' lives as though they were her own, has been criticized. However, she and other activists defend it as the testimony of my people. She received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1992. Emmeline Pankhurst was born in 1858 to activist parents in England and started working for women's right to vote at age 14. She tried to join the Left Labour Party but was refused because she was a woman. She became more determined when her work exposed her to the harsh conditions of England's workhouses. She founded an activist group that advocated for votes for women by all means necessary, including arson and hunger strikes. Her militant tactics drove a wedge between herself and two of her daughters, but she is credited with being a major force for winning suffrage in 1918. Janet McLeod, also known as Yetzi Blue, was born in 1934. She was a prominent Native American and Indigenous rights activist. Her activism helped lead to the 1974 Bolt decision, for which she was dubbed the Rosa Parks of the American Indian movement. She co-founded Women of All Red Nations, WARN, in 1974. The first convening of the Indigenous Women's Network was in her backyard in Yelm, Washington in August 1985. In my work, I meet with many folks each week to support them as they find their spiritual direction. This past year, I heard a lot about loss of hope. I'm starting to wonder about relying too much on hope. When we may not have hope, we must remain faithful to the work of creating good in the world. So I'm leaning more on love and persistence. Love and persistence can create hope. Personally, I'm not coming from a place of hope when I look at the inauguration coming up for the US president. I'm looking at Emmeline and Teresa and Wangari and feeling love for my planet, for my human siblings. I'm looking at Gandhi and Martin, and Jesus, and I'm feeling commitment to continuing the work. I will remain faithful to the work that must be done. In Unitarian Universalism, we pray with our actions. Every action we take that comes from our principles, our love for this world, and persistent commitment to justice is a prayer. We have to get quiet enough to notice what is the right thing to do in this moment. Who is the most important one? When is the most important time? And what is the most important thing to do? Hush by Kimberly Quinn Johnson. Hush, somebody's calling your name. Can you hear it? Calling you to a past not quite forgotten. Calling us to a future not fully imagined. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling our name. What shall we do? I invite you to write down one thing that you have done regularly in the last few months that made the world a better place. Perhaps you taught a child, separated the recycling, overtipped, sat with hurting people and listened. Now I invite you to write down one thing that you have done irregularly in the last few months that made the world a better place. Perhaps you donated to a cause, phone banked for votes, interrupted a racist joke or microaggression, got real noisy about an injustice that wasn't getting the attention it deserved. Now take a look at what you've written. You did great. You did these things. Yay, you. Notice the feeling of accomplishment. And now, I invite you to write down one thing that will make the world a better place that you would like to add to your regular choices. It may be, I'll join the upcoming conversation about the eighth principle, or I'll watch for the UU Common Read for this year and join in the discussion, or I'll make a couple calls to people I haven't heard from in a while. Or you may already know what you would like to do. You may have seen that coffee mug or the t-shirt that says, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." Turns out that is not a real Gandhi quote. It's a vastly simplified version of what he actually said. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. We need not wait to see what others do. Gandhi is telling us that personal and social transformation go hand in hand, and personal transformation is not enough. We can retrain ourselves, and we need to get out there and do things. Gandhi responded to the call of his country. He also knew that one person alone can't change much. Unjust authority can be overturned only by great numbers of people working together with discipline, with persistence. We, together, are the ones we've been waiting for. We can't do it alone. We need every person doing the one true thing they are called to do, and we need to stop waiting for someone else to do it. On the 1st of January 2019 in India, millions of women stood arm in arm to create a 385-mile-long human wall along the highway. It was created to put the rest of the country on notice that women are demanding gender equity and women's rights. In a poem June Jordan wrote about a similar action taken in 1956 in South Africa, when 40,000 women and children used their bodies to protest against apartheid. She says, "And who will join this standing up? And the ones who stood without sweet company will sing and sing back into the mountains and, if necessary, even under the sea. We are the ones we have been waiting for." We can link arms like those who held fast in South Africa, like those who held fast in India. We can make our voices heard and put our bodies on the line, bringing water to the parched and justice to the oppressed. Bree Newsom, who climbed a pole to snatch down the Confederate flag at the South Carolina State House in 2015, said, "We still face a danger in public space. In that way, I absolutely feel that what we're doing is continuing in the legacy of Martin Luther King." Be like Bree and tear down the symbols of oppression and build up the movement for justice. Martin Luther King struggled with despair many times while doing the work. He put his head in his hands and prayed, and then returned to organizing for civil rights, for the end of unfair labor practices, and for peace. He had faith that in the end, justice and love would win. He also knew that the end had not come yet, and a lot of work needed to be done now in order for justice to roll down like water and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Together, we will be the change we wish to see in the world. So may it be. Amen, and blessed be.
Now let us join voices for our closing song, Building a New Way, sung by Leah Morris.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. are building a new way, growing stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free of hate and greed and tyranny. We are working to be free. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, our world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
It is almost time to extinguish our chalice, but before doing so, I want to remind you that our guest speaker next week is Reverend Mark Gallagher, who used to serve our Vancouver congregation and who was greatly appreciated when he spoke here. He will speak on navigating complicated human relationships. Please join me now in the extinguishing of our chalice with these words. We extinguish our flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you. After the service, I hope you'll join us for our virtual coffee hour. I hope to see you then. But first, let us turn our attention to Dana Weir as she performs We Shall Overcome on her flute.